SLDS is that modern looking CSS that Lightning uses to style its elements. Okay, it is purely CSS and strictly aesthetics related. Okay, no server calls, no on clicks whatsoever. Okay, just CSS. A common misconception amongst business beginners is that SLDS is for Lightning only. Okay, that is not true. SLDS is totally independent of Lightning framework. In fact, Lightning and its base components themselves inherit their styling from SLDS behind the scenes. Okay, they're all SLDS based. Because it is just CSS, you can very easily import SLDS into your Visualforce page as well, or any web page for that matter, and make those pages look like Lightning. Okay, so under the hood, it could still be Visualforce, but from an appearance standpoint, you could make it look like Lightning. Okay, that is also an option available to you. SLDS is very actively managed and it is very elegantly done. So I highly recommend using it in your components. Okay, especially for those of you who are not super comfortable with the CSS, and more often than not you rely on Google for help with styling something a certain way. Then I'm sure you'll really appreciate SLDS if that's you. It'll do all the heavy lifting when it comes to styling your elements. Okay, so it's a nice thing that you could take advantage of. Well, one good question at this point would be, if Lightning components already inherit their styling from SLDS, why do you still need SLDS when building custom Lightning components at all? Right? They already have it. So what is SLDS bringing to the table when you're already building Lightning components, right? True that Lightning input, Lightning card, Lightning button, what have you, and all of those base components in Lightning namespace, they all use SLDS already because they come with it, they ship with it. Um, SLDS is what they use behind the scenes by default. But it is very important to understand that SLDS is not just about styling certain base components. It is somewhat bigger than that. It actually provides guidelines and best practices for all aspects of styling. Okay, for example, how do you position a certain Lightning input base component, or a piece of text, anything, at the center of your component, like absolute center of your component? Okay, well, certainly you have to throw in some custom CSS in there, right? Because by default, any base component or anything, any element that you throw in is slapped onto the left side of your component, right? But I want this base element, this element to be in the absolute center, and then you have to have some kind of a custom CSS to make that happen. Instead, what if I told you that SLDS has one single ready-made class precisely for that purpose, which will do the trick for you without writing any custom CSS whatsoever? That'll be nice to have, right? So let me show that to you. Let's Google for um, SLDS alignment. Okay, there, the first result. Like I mentioned, lightningdesignsystem.com, that is a separate website, because it's like a separate independent project that Salesforce folks um, um, have. It's not Lightning Components Library anymore. It is its own thing. It is Lightning Design System. So if you're searching for anything SLDS related, this is your go-to place. Okay, so I searched for SLDS alignment, and notice the first thing that shows up is alignment SLDS. And I was giving you this example because I know on top of my head that that there is this SLDS styling which would position your text or your base element, whatever you have on your page, within this class. There's that one class. You give that to your div and arrange your content within that div. By default, all of that content will be centered like that at the center of your component. Good, right? That's one example. What if you want to put a border? You have the baked in pre-baked styles for borders as well. So there, this is the example. This is how it looks. There is that text, and then on top of it there is a border because we're looking at a top border. That's the variant that you're looking at. If you want it on the right, click on that right, and there's the border on the right. And how do we accomplish, how do we get that border? Is by take a look at the actual class that is running. And notice that there are a couple more divs here, which are, first one is kind of useless. It is throwing in some hard-coded padding. You could ignore that. And then this class is like the previous one, absolute center. So there, for example, for demonstration purposes, they're choosing to center align the text here. But that is also besides the point. We are focusing on borders here. So the only class that you need if you want a border to the right of your element is SLDS hyphen border underscore right. Okay. What if you want it at the bottom? Click on that, and there the class changes to SLDS hyphen border underscore bottom. Have this class, you will have that border right under your element. Okay. um, because this is a Salesforce provided class, you are only getting that colored border, like light gray. If you want a green border or a blue border, you'll be forced to extend this particular class. But it is not recommended, because if Salesforce changes the styling of the SLDS border bottom in the future to keep up with the changing technology, you will be on your own because you're choosing to override with your custom styles. Okay. um, so it's not really recommended, but you can definitely choose to do that. Okay, that is about border. Let's take another example. There is floats and margins. Like usually if you have to provide a margin to a particular element, what is it that you're going to do? You're going to go to your CSS part of your page or wherever you're specifying the CSS, and then you hard code it as margin whatever in pixels or rems or what have you. Instead, there are classes that would give you that margin piece and padding. Let me click on padding. um, Notice this. If you want padding, what are you going to do? Padding colon 5 pixel or 1 rem or whatever. That's the ideal way you would do in a normal web page, or maybe even in Visualforce, right? You'll have a style element, you'll create a class, or you probably hard code it in the style aspect, or you know how to give padding to an element. But watch what Lightning does, or what Lightning recommends. If you want a padding on the top, okay, there is that class SLDS hyphen p hyphen top underscore very 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 hyphen small, very very small, very small, small, medium, large, extra large, double XL. Okay, these are all the padding sizes that they have available to you that you could just use instead of hard coding your padding. Okay, this is just top. What if you want a padding all around? There's that around variant. Just click on that, and then notice that if I specify, if I grab this guy, copy it and paste it around, or put my input element or lightning element or anything between this, within that div tag, it will automatically have double X small padding around it, which is going to be that sized padding. Okay. So what is the advantage? Why should you use SLDS? The advantage is that you will be using Salesforce provided classes. Okay, some experts are designing these classes for us, and it's very well thought of. Like I mentioned, it's elegant and very actively managed. So if Salesforce updates these classes down the road, your app will automatically inherit those changes if you use these classes. Okay, however, like I said, if you override these styles or provide your own styles and not use SLDS at all, you can certainly do that, but at that point you're on your own. Okay, now let's get back to our list. What else is available? Let's take let's see text. For example, if you have to have a error text message, like in red color font, you want to show an error message. How would you do that? How would you style it? Instead of hard coding the style as color, font color red or whatever, you could pick the color error variant of the text utility. Okay, let me select that, and there, that is the red color text. And the text, which class is responsible for this red color text? It's the SLDS hyphen text hyphen color underscore error. Okay, and any text that you put within that div tag will automatically have that red color. Right, and then there are some other variants, like if you want to have like a heading, like an h1 header tags, there's that large heading, or if you want a medium-sized heading, small, or uppercase. If you want everything to be in uppercase, then all you need to do is instead of text transform or whatever you do in CSS, you do SLDS text title underscore caps. Okay. Um, so that's that. What else? What else is available? Let us move away a little bit from the utilities, and let's go to component blueprints. Okay. Accordion is the first example. There is, if you've noticed in one of our earlier videos, excuse me, I did briefly mention a base component in the Lightning namespace called Lightning Accordion. Okay, it's a base component. So there's that button here up on the top which will take us to the actual Lightning component. This is like, again, this is just the CSS. Let me actually open this up. Let me open it in a new window, and this will open the counterpart of that, of this particular styling in Lightning component library under Lightning namespace, which is Lightning Accordion. So it is very important for you to understand what the difference between this and this is. Okay, Lightning Design SLDS, the Salesforce Lightning Design System, is purely CSS. It has to do with the looks only, look and feel, CSS only. No button clicks, no actions, no functionality of that sorts of any kind. But these will come with SLDS plus some additional functionality like event handling, like what should happen on click, which section should be shown by default, and all that fancy additions and handlers. You get all of that with this. So this is like a um, extension of this, if I could say that. I hope I'm making sense here. um, um, But in that case, why would you need this? Like, what is the point of us going through these SLDS examples right now when we already have Lightning Accordion, right? This is in case you choose to create your own accordion component. Okay, then for whatever reason, like for some reason, if you feel like this Lightning Accordion is not doing what you think it should be doing for your, or it's not meeting your specific business requirement, if that is the case, then SLDS gives you a way to get it gets you started. You can grab this piece of code here that you have, which is responsible for displaying this accordion like that. You can copy this guy, and then paste it in your Lightning component, and then you will mimic this exact piece. After this, implementing the on-click functionality, implementing what happens when you click on this drop-down button, that is, you have to customize everything from ground up. That is on you. But you have the option to go that route should you choose to. Okay, all you need to do is just copy this and paste it over. But if the copy paste doesn't save or doesn't work, most likely it is because of this SVG tag here, which is now deprecated. So you might have to replace it with lightning button icon. SVG is nothing but an image. So its replacement is lightning button icon. So if you replace all of these SVG tags with lightning button icon, um, and then save it, you'll see precisely that component. Okay. um, just that this particular piece of the documentation has not been updated yet. So just keep that in mind, please. Um, and then another example would be um, cards. Um, we have in one of our earlier videos, we have seen we have implemented lightning card, which is a base component in our account info component when we were building that. We used this piece of code in one of our previous videos. Okay, so if for some reason this lightning card doesn't meet your precise requirements, then you have the option excuse me, to implement your own lightning card component. Okay, and how do you get started? Just show code, copy that over, replace all SVGs if there are any like that there, replace that with lightning button icon, and that's it. Paste it in your lightning component. You will see precisely that. Okay. um and then there are a ton of examples like that. There is app launcher, something a little more complex. Like if you notice, if you go back to your lightning application and there is that app launcher, this is a place where you can select your lightning application that you want to go to. um, um, so is precisely that. How SLDS implements it behind the scenes is given right there. So all of this code here is making up this app launcher window. Okay. And then there are, I know there's something similar like welcome mat. They're a little fancy. Um, some text and description to the left and some fancy buttons to the right with some icons and description, right? And the code will be like right down there, like show code, and you'll see how they're actually doing it behind the scenes, and you could mimic, you replicate this as well and extend it, um, tailor it to your specific needs, right? Visual picker is nothing but a thumbnail view. You can have icons in them, and display maybe files, perhaps files, right? Or whatever, like maybe photographs of people if you're building an HR system, or whatever. Like it's a thumbnail view, a list of thumbnails. Okay. And there like and there are a ton of such examples here, so I suggest you go over them so you know what is already available. Okay. And the last aspect I would like to point out before we see some examples in action is icons. Type in icons, and there you could go there and notice that there are a ton of icons available for you to use in your application. There are standard icons, and then there are utility icons that are already available, meaning that you don't need to import anything. I'm going to show you how to use these icons in a lightning component shortly, but just keep in mind that these are readily available for you to use directly because they come with SLDS, and SLDS comes with your lightning based components. Okay. Well, enough talking. So let's see how to use some SLDS in your Lightning components. I'm going to point out some differences, how to import, how to style your components using SLDS. Like previously we've been talking about examples where there's borders, there's padding. Some simple examples is what I'm going to pick for demonstration, but I'm sure you can uh, take it from there. Okay. All right. So let me go back to the developer console. And what are we going to do? Let us create a brand new component. Lightning component. I want it to be app hostable. I want it to be available for all page types. Okay. And then let me call it SLDS test. Okay. Submit. The first thing that I'm going to do is let's establish the objective first. The objective, what we're going to do now is I'm going to throw in a Lightning input base component. I'm going to throw in a UI input text base component. And then I'm going to throw in a HTML input base component. And then I'm going to show you first what the differences are between the three. I'm also going to create a Visualforce page and throw in Apex input text also in there. So 4 different input components, how they look, and then how can you make them look like their Lightning components just by throwing in some CSS on them. Okay, that's the exercise that we're going to do now. All right, so um, the first thing is Lightning input. Let's go here and search for Lightning, or let's start typing in. I think we now know how Lightning input works, so let's just type it. Lightning input. What does it take? Name. It takes name, and it takes a value, and then I'm also going to throw in a placeholder. Okay, um, and then that's it. I'm gonna name it Lightning input. Okay, and then the value is gonna be blank, and then the placeholder is gonna be let me use Lightning input so we know that we are looking at Lightning input. Okay, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in, if you followed the previous videos, I've mentioned that there are 2 separate namespaces. For input, there is Lightning input, and then there is, I believe, also in UI input text. Okay, in UI namespace. And then there's Lightning input and Lightning namespace. So I'm going to show you the difference. And I mentioned that the difference between Lightning input and UI input text is that UI input text does not come with SLDS by default. Okay, let's see that now. And now I'm gonna type in UI namespace, input text, and the value is gonna be blank, and placeholder is also available in um, input text also. I'm gonna just take that and paste it in placeholder. Okay. Um, and what else? HTML, basic HTML input. Okay, which is input. Type is gonna be text, right? And then placeholder again. What is it gonna be? Let's do HTML input. All right. There. That's good enough for now. Let us save it. And for testing purposes, let me create a new Lightning application. Okay, SLDS test app. Submit. And SLDS test app like that. Okay, save it. Mm, Oops, SLDS test is the component name. Yep. Okay, so preview it. So Lightning input, UI input text, HTML input, like that. All right. Notice that Lightning input is also looking just like the others. Why? Because our app does not extend. What is it? I think it is Force SLDS, right? Save it, and there. The minute you extend Force SLDS, your Lightning components will use SLDS, and because Lightning components already are aware of SLDS, it automatically refreshed, and notice the difference now. This is Lightning styled input. It spans across, it is device aware, it takes the full width, but if you look at it from a mobile view, it only shows, it doesn't show a scroll bar. It wraps, it adjusts its width according to the device. But UI input text and HTML input, they look similar. They're like no styling whatsoever, even though we imported the SLDS. But these guys don't know anything about the SLDS classes. They don't. They don't import or implement those classes at all. Okay. Um, so let's do that. So what are we going to do? Let us go to um, a the SLDS here, and then let me search for SLDS input. Okay, there, Lightning Design System input. Okay, so here's the code for implementing something that looks like that. Okay, and in here they're using a basic HTML, our third type. Okay, so there is a div class which says it's a form element, and then there is a form element label. So this input label is precisely this line. There's that input label text there, and then in the next element, a form control, they slapped in the input, actual input tag, input element. Okay, and then the class is SLDS input. All right, so let's just grab that. Now let's take this, or let's just take the classes for now. Okay, I'm going to take that and then go here. Nope, component. Yep. Let's start off with our HTML. So I'm going to paste that right there. First div and second div. Good. And then select Shift Tab will format your code. Okay, so there, that's and then there's a class for the actual input element called SLDS input. Okay, save it and watch what happens when you refresh this particular app. There, that is your HTML input now with a label. Okay, and now look at how it goes all the way. It uses all the space that it can use on the page depending on the device that you're viewing it from. Okay, easy, right? And similarly, like if I want to use the same logic for the input text, it'll just work. Div once, div twice, but I don't want the label this time. I'm just gonna use the actual element and then wrap it, and then the input text also takes class, and then that is going to be SLDS input again. Save it and refresh it. There. Okay, I'm gonna just so it looks a little nicer, I'm gonna just or consistent I should say, I'm gonna remove the label for our HTML also, and then refresh it, and there. So this is Lightning input by default, no additional styling. That is Lightning input. I did not wrap this around any custom CSS at all, right? And it looks like that. And the other two, because they don't import CSS SLDS by default, you're wrapping them in SLDS classes, and you're making them look like Lightning. Okay. Okay, good. So let us take another example now. Padding. I was mentioning padding, which is a part of the utilities. And in padding, I would like now that notice that each of these components are like stacked on one top of the other. I wanna throw in some padding around them. How do I do that? Around, and I would like to pick very, very small. Okay, so that is the responsible class. So I'm gonna take that, and I'm gonna go back to my component and div class. In addition to form element, I'm gonna do a space, and I could do that, right? Instead of putting it in another div, I'm gonna say, hey, use the styling from all of these classes. And Lightning input doesn't come default with padding. Sure, makes sense, right? So I'm gonna throw in a um, div class for that, just so it has padding. And I'm gonna throw this Lightning input component in there, and Control A, Shift Tab to format, save it, and then refresh it. Watch what happens. There, see? Now there is nice padding between our components, which is very, very small padding. Okay, all right, now let's just take one final simple example and put in some borders. Okay, borders, and if I want to have what border bottom borders, the class responsible is that. So I'm going to take that SLDS hyphen border underscore bottom, and I'm going to go back to my component, and let us say I paste it here after the padding. So Lightning input will have a border bottom, and then this will have a border bottom, but I don't want a border bottom under my HTML because that is the last element. I'm just choosing to. Okay, refresh it. There, one border, second border, no border at all. Good. Um, the next piece that I want to show you. Oh, actually, there are a couple things. One, I promised I'm going to show you how to use icons in SLDS, right? So let's throw in one icon here up on the top somewhere. It's gonna be lightning button icon. I was mentioning that you should use this particular base component instead of SVG tags if you find any of those in the documentation. Okay, and then I know from experience that lightning button icon supports something called as icon name, and then size, and then a variant, and then alternative text. I think this is a bug, but button icon forces you to provide alternative text, otherwise the page doesn't render. That's what I've noticed. So think of it as a required field, although you can save this particular component without it. But if the page doesn't load and you have some lightning button icons on your page, just make sure you provide alternative text to them. Okay, and hope that solves the problem. um, uh, and how do I know these parameters that lightning button icon accepts? I said it's from experience, but you could definitely go to lightning component library and go to the documentation and specification tabs, and you will see these supported parameters there. Okay, so icon name, and while I was mentioning icons to you, I pointed out that there are different types of icons. One, standard icons, and there are utility icons. Utility icons are the ones towards the end, the ones in black and white. Okay, there are utility icons. So the way to use them is in icon name, you just specify utility colon. Um, Let me just say settings. I know that this exists. Let me show you how it looks. Settings there. That gear. Okay, so it is a part of the utility icon set. It is called settings. So the way you invoke it is utility colon the name of the image. Okay, and then the size, let me just make it as medium, small, medium, larger supported. And there are multiple variants which you can also find in Lightning Component Library, but I know the variant that I want here for now is border filled. Okay, so the icon will have a border around it, but you can choose to have bare, which means no border, just show the icon. There are multiple variants to it, which are pretty simple to understand if you go through the component library. And then alternative text is, let me just say settings, right? And then save it. Refresh. There. That is your lightning button icon. And this also supports a on click. It's a button. It's an icon, which is a button also. Okay, that's what, and the reason why I'm showing this to you is to make you understand how to specify an icon that you have available in SLDS. Okay, the key part is that icon name, utility colon the name. Like if you say user and save it, refresh it, there it becomes user. Okay, and then we could also throw in some padding around it because it is towards the corner, but I'm sure you get the point. So the last piece that I want to show you is Apex page. So I did mention that you can use the styling not only in a Lightning component, but you can also use this in a Visualforce page or any web page for that matter. I'm just gonna show you how to do this in a Visualforce page for now. Let's go back to developer console. Let me go and create a new Visualforce page. Select that. Um, SLDS in Visualforce test. Okay, let's call that. All right. So what do we need to import? So Visualforce pages by default don't inherit SLDS, right? So in order to enable SLDS, what you need to do here is there is one simple line. Um, there is a new tag called Apex SLDS. That's it. You specify that in your Apex page, and you are importing the entire SLDS. Once you specify this line, whatever you did in your Lightning components, like this class, the the padding, the border, the padding, everything that we've been seeing in the lightningdesignsystem.com, the utilities and the um, blueprints, whatever, the styling will be available for you to use. Okay, this is the key aspect. But let me for demonstration sakes, let me move forward, and I'm going to show you how an Apex input text would look like by default, and how you could make it look like a Lightning component. Okay, so what I'm going to do, Apex input text, right? Apex input text, label, I know it accepts. I know there is a value. I know there is a style, and then style class. Yep, let's do style class, because this is what we'll use eventually. And then placeholder, I know you do HTML placeholder. um, that's my Apex input text. Okay, and then here I'm gonna say Apex input text. That's my placeholder. And for label, I'm just gonna say Apex input text again. Okay, and for value, I need to bind this because it is Visualforce. Let me accept. Let me do a standard controller account, right? And then throw in the value as account dot name for now, um, right? and then Apex form for our input text. Just a basic bare bones Visualforce page for demonstration. Okay. All right. Let me save it. Let's preview it. There. Oh, good. So that's the Apex input text for you. Okay, by default. All right. Now what are we gonna do? We have imported our SLDS already, right? We did. So we're just gonna go to our SLDS test app, and then I'm gonna grab this style that we have already used there. I'm gonna come back to my Visualforce page. I'm going to paste it just like that. Two divs, right? Control A, Shift Tab, save. Okay, there. And now it is still SLDS input. Our element style is going to be SLDS input in style class for that particular element. Like if you've noticed, for input text we did specify the class as SLDS input, and now let us see what happens there. See, now it spans across. It has a very small padding around, and then there's a border underneath. Okay, which is from these. Here is the padding, here is the border, and here is the actual input style, so resulting in an Apex input looking like that, which is lightning style, right? Makes sense. Okay, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you for about SLDS. I'm sure, like I mentioned, there are tons of examples out there. It's hard to cover every example, but I hope this helps and gives you the idea that you need to take it from here. Okay, and before we conclude this video, something worth mentioning is that let me go back to the SLDS website. Notice that the website name is Lightning Design System. So it is very easy to get to call it or abbreviate it as LDS, Lightning Design System, LDS, right? But please don't refer to this as LDS. This is SLDS. Okay, although the website is Lightning Design System, this is called SLDS, which is Salesforce Lightning Design System. The reason why I'm pointing this out is that there is something else out there in Lightning framework called LDS. It is Lightning Data Service, which is totally different, and we have not covered that yet. Okay, so don't get confused with that. This is SLDS, which is strictly CSS and UI related. LDS is actually quite the opposite. It is just the backend related, the brain, like it makes server calls. It is called Lightning Data Service. So SLDS is SLDS, LDS is Lightning Data Service. Just keep that in mind. Just don't get confused. If you read through any of the forums, or if you go through Stack Overflow with any questions or what have you, if somebody mentions LDS, do not confuse that to be SLDS. Right? Good.